and welcome to another episode of the Performance Cafe. It's really great to have you here today. To all our followers, people that have been hanging around with us since COVID, when this whole wild ride started, and hello to everyone that is new, and so if you're first time, you are very welcome. We hope that you're going to carry on joining us at the Performance Cafe. My name is Ines Berger, and I am a life coach, business coach, HR consultant, and leadership development specialist. And in Performance Cafe, we talk about all the things we can do in order to make life at work productive and humane. We like to talk about things like, strengths and the way we collaborate and how we would make the world a better place one employee at a time. So, as I explained last week, seeing that I'm a coach, it's very interesting that since I started this in 2020, I've never spoken much about coaching per se. And so we're doing a little bit of a series, a little mini series around what is coaching about. So many times it's so interesting. People come and say, can you teach me to coach? And they go, have you ever been coached? And I go, no. And I'm like, you want to be coached, but you have no idea what it's about. And so this is me removing that wall. And so taking you inside with a couple of case studies on topics I've coached on, not necessarily people I've coached on, so for confidentiality, everything I say here, even when I sound like I'm speaking directly to a person, I'm not actually referring to one single person, but sort of like a couple of case studies all mushed together. And the idea is that you see what happens, how does this helping occur? So this week, we are carrying on a thing we started last week, and that is about feedback. And that's because I think feedback is one of the most important things that we can ever do, whether it's to our children, our friends, our peers at work, our team members, our bosses, our downlines, people that we manage or supervise, because you see, it's the only way we grow. And while we enjoy being in a happy space and things always going right, we know life's not like that. And that only when someone who really cares sits up and goes, hey, I have something to tell you, only then do we actually start growing. I have a quote, I believe it's attributed to Madiba, to Mandela, that says, you win some, you learn some. So when we win, we're not always learning as much as when we are busy learning some, where there's a big lot of information we need to learn about how we can do things better. So last week we spoke about receiving feedback and what to do with it because, I just say the word feedback. Did you feel your pulse go up? Did you feel your stomach like churn a little bit? And that was the receiving feedback. Now, what I often think is that receiving feedback, especially when it's not great to hear, what we call constructive criticism or constructive feedback, but we actually know what we're hearing is going to be sore. It's going to be difficult for us. What's worse than that is having to give that feedback. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but really preparing to give this feedback and then giving it, landing it, and hoping that the other person makes the best of it or putting a process in place so that the person makes the best of it, that is absolutely the most important thing. So, last week we spoke about Jean, and Jean is a supervisor at a company. She is new to the organization, and although she's got a lot of experience supervising other people, she's in a related industry, so not exactly the same, but at the same time, there are a couple of challenges. And Jean was busy talking to one of her team members about how to address an issue that had come up, and her manager, Tom, called her aside. And he said to her, look, I need to talk to you about this. I saw you speaking to so-and-so. I just want to give you some feedback that the way you do it isn't really coming across great. You're not kind enough. You're too directive. Beg your pardon, that was Zika. You're not kind enough. You're too directive. You keep on doing this, so it's not a once-off either. And basically, it's damaging your relationship with the team, and it's maybe taking a while for the team to learn to trust you. So last week, I spoke about the composite Jean of all the people that I've spoken to. and how she felt flawed, how she felt ashamed, how she felt embarrassed, and all this stuff. Now, this week, I want us to talk a little bit about Tom, because you see, Tom had to prepare to give her that feedback. And sometimes we think, I hate giving feedback, but I've got to go in there and I've got to go it alone. But actually, what's really great about sharing feedback, or when you're preparing feedback along with a coach, is that the coach is emotionally unattached. The coach is not impacted by the feedback and therefore can see the woods for the trees. First things first, when you have to give feedback, I've done this 1,000 times, I've had to do disciplinaries, trust me, everything goes into code red, right? It is stressful, it is emotional, it is overwhelming. It is kind of like, can I just get to the end of this day? That's really what it's about. And so what happens is, if we go into it in that fashion, well, the outcome is going to be what we put in. You know, I remember when computers were first sort of became a thing, people would say, when you get computers, it's going to fix everything. And guys would go, junk in, junk out. Whatever you put into the computer, if it's junk, what you get out is also going to be junk. And so this feedback process feels the same to me. So what we can do is, I'm going to tell you about Tom. If Tom had come to sit in front of me, I'm going to tell you what I told some of my other clients, or tell you what I asked, actually, because coaches ask, we don't tell. So the first thing that needs to be considered is, how did this come about? It's so easy, right? I often hear, well, this person's been performing poorly for a while. So, well, performing poorly actually wasn't the starting point. The starting point was what came before performing poorly. So maybe there are questions around, why did Tom wait for this to happen a couple of times before he actually responded to it? What does performing poorly mean? What does it mean to Tom? And what does it mean to Jean? How were expectations set by Tom? How did he check his expectations with Jean? Now, already I'm hoping that if you're going through this feedback thing, that you've got to give feedback, and I ask you those 3 questions, I'm hoping you're going to sit back and go, holy cow, I did not think of that. Because you see, sometimes emotions of feedback, it becomes about emotions. Actually, it's not. Feedback is actually about connection. It's about dialogue without the emotions. To take a good example, and it's one I often use with my clients, transactional analysis. Some of you who've been around for a while will know there's probably a video about it back a couple of years ago. But what transactional analysis says, that when 2 people are in a room, there are actually 6 schemas or identities speaking to each other. We each have a parental schema where we talk down to people. We each have an adult schema where we will speak to others as if they are our equals. And we each have a child schema where we interact with other people as if we are, the child in the relationship. So let's go back to Tom and Jean. If Tom had walked up to Jean and said to her, I told you not to do it that way, or do you know what you're doing? You think about this. What's he doing? He's coming across like a parent, right? And it's irrespective whether it comes from a man or woman, whatever that dynamic is, it doesn't matter. It's the fact that the moment that I say it, I almost feel like I'm staring down at you from my nose. It's like, how dare you? If Jean then responds and she goes, but I didn't know better, right? You can actually see it in my whole body, in my posture. You can see I become small. I look up. I'm doing the child, right? And you can hear it's like I'm blaming someone else. It's like it's not about me. So I didn't know better. It's not my fault, right? And what we're trying to do is we're trying to move it to the center where we get rid of the paternalistic approach, where we get away from the child approach or the parental approach and the child approach, and we go to adult, where we go, I'd like to sit you down. Let's go and grab a cup of coffee. I think we need to do a bit of feedback. I saw that discussion and I was wondering why you took that particular route and if I could give you some alternative suggestions. Very different, right? And so what happens is, to have that discussion to help the people get to that place where they can use transactional analysis and go to adult, a couple of things that we would talk about beforehand. So I spoke about expectations and whether Tom had set his expectations for Jean, but at the same time, I wonder if Tom understands his expectations for himself. So here's the thing. If I tell you how many times a day someone opens their mouth to me and says, I don't have time to, speak to my people, interact with my family, be with my community, finish my own work, start studying, start a family. Because we are so pressed for time, what we do is we shortchange ourselves on thinking. So a couple of years ago, apologies, I did a strategic scenario planning course at GIBS, one of our local universities or business schools. And it was so interesting that the first part of the strategic planning workshop, the scenario planning workshop, what's going on with me this morning, was around taking time, slowing down and taking time. Because we need time to think and we need time to process. So what happens is when Tom says, I need you to do X, my question to him would be, okay, who said this is what's needed? Is it an organizational requirement? Departmental requirement? Is it your requirement? Is it something that you need in order for your environment to work better? And is it sometimes something you need for your identity to work better? So when we go into this discussion, it can get quite deep. And the important thing about that is that the outcome is normally, what does the organization want? So the organization says build 20 widgets. Okay. How do 20 widgets boil down to the department? Okay, we need to make the X factor of the widget. Perfect. Right. What do you need, Tom? How does that, making that X factor, what does it look like to you? I think it's Brene Brown. I'm quoting her. She says, paint success. Tell me what in your mind you see as success. And then only do we talk about Jean and how she played into this. Because you see, normally as managers, people get so stuck and so busy, they don't think this through. So they become these little walking robots for the organization. Hand over a command, assume it will be understood, then assumes it will be understood from their frame of reference. And then when things go wrong, they go, oh, that person's wrong, and I've got to tell them that they're wrong. And now I feel all worked up and guilty because I've got to tell them they're wrong. And on top of that, I'm nervous to do it. So a lot of coaching actually goes into what do you expect? Then the next thing, once we've sort of worked on that, a favorite thing that I'd like to do with my clients is to ask them, so what do you want this relationship to be when you finish the conversation? Because you see, it's so easy with feedback to walk in and go, I'm the manager, I have the power, you will do this. It's not entirely wrong. You are the manager, you do have the power, and I am not going to get paid if I don't listen to you. However, what is the relationship like afterwards? Do you want to just merely get this person back on track as if they're a little robot and that's it? Or do you want a relationship that's at least civil so that when you walk past each other, you'll greet each other? You don't have to be best friends. That's fine. Do you want a relationship that's open, trusting, and collaborative so that you can have many more of these conversations, but that they become less and less sticky because you actually are used to interacting with each other? Or do you want to have a relationship that leads to innovation where anyone can say anything to anyone else in the spirit of this is so new and we don't even know how it's going to work, but we're going to work on it and we're going to give feedback till we get it right? Because if you decide what you want that relationship to be when you walk out of the feedback discussion, it's going to regulate how you have the feedback discussion. I hope that makes a lot of sense. Right. So now we've taken a look at what Tom needed, what he wants from the relationship. And then we can take a look at the language that Jean speaks. I just love my job. I cannot explain to you people how much I love my job. I just spent another 2 hours with a fabulous leadership group in our Manager to Leader development course. And we spent literally 2 hours talking about communication. And the word that came up the most was not communication. It was customization. It was about, when I communicate, how do I speak in a language that that person understands so that it really lands with them? And then how do I check that I've customized it appropriately for them? I must admit, it was a group of IT executives or managers that I was speaking with. So no wonder we got to the word customization, right? If it was social media, it would have been personalization. So it's about less of me and more of that person. I love it when I talk about coaching. I say, understand, when I coach, the spotlight's not on me, the spotlight is on that person. And I'm asking them the questions to see what they can figure out for themselves. The same with communication. It's not about me standing there with a loud halo shouting the same message over and over. Have you heard people go, but I've told them 3 times now? Well, if you've told them 3 times, they're not listening. They're not standing in front of you trying hard as hell not to listen. Just don't understand it. Use another language. In my case, draw things. I love it when people describe things and they start drawing. It's like my brain just clicks because I'm a visual learner. So find that language that they speak. And you will find that the moment that you snap into their language, they will be able to access yours. It's never ceased to amaze me, and I think I said it last week as well, that when I've had a truly, truly difficult conversation with someone and I've given them some hard feedback, but we've really worked on a plan about it to say, okay, I give the feedback, I say, please go, think through it all, come back, tell me if you've got any questions, if you need further clarity, and tell me what you're going to action and how you're going to action it. Once we've done that process, the relationship is bulletproof, because after that, there is so much trust, because giving feedback is as vulnerable as receiving the feedback. But when someone comes back and goes, I really don't agree with XYZ, but I did pick up on this thing. That's all we need. We need to be heard, because you know what? Every time you give feedback afterwards, that person is going to take on a little bit more. But you will also learn more about that person, and you'll be able to take on a little bit more. So I think that's all for giving feedback today. I hope that was useful to you. And if you've enjoyed the stream and are looking for more, we record these and upload them after the fact as videos onto YouTube, Facebook. And we turn them into podcasts, which can be found on all popular podcasting platforms. Related articles can be found on our website, perform4.com. And then the live streams themselves are held on my LinkedIn every Wednesday morning, 9:30 SAST South Africa time. And that's GMT -2. So if you have any questions or suggestions for topics, please do leave a comment on any platform of your choice, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Until then, I hope that you are very prosperous in preparing your feedback.